Hi, Adam from the Brisbane Channel, and this weekly update is a massive one. It's sponsored by the Exotics Vet and YB Painting Services, both of whom are offering you discounts, but more on that later. This week we've got hospital dramas, home value updates, controversies, celebrations, and heaps more from across Greater Brisbane's 5 LGAs: Brisbane, Ipswich, Logan, Moreton Bay, and the Redlands. This week I'm going to put the quick bites, those short and snappy updates on things happening across Greater Brisbane, here at the start of the video before getting to the meatier updates, and at the end giving my 2 cents on some of the issues covered. So let's go. In Brisbane City on Monday, the Adelaide Street Tunnel opened in downtown Brisbane, with many buses now running through the tunnel instead of under Queen Street Mall. We'll keep an eye on the impact on traffic and public transport across Brisbane in the coming weeks and months here on the Brisbane Channel. Queensland victims of crime will now have the fee for replacement of driver's licence, licence plates and other ID documents waived if the ID was damaged, destroyed or lost because of a crime or misdemeanour committed by someone else. This came into effect on the 1st of October and will also apply to documents that need to be replaced due to a data breach. The first round of Play On vouchers has now closed, with Queensland families snapping up all available vouchers, which cover $200 for children's sporting activities. The next round will begin in January of 2026, and of course we'll remind you before applications open. In the Redlands, Mayor Joss Mitchell is pushing for the number of councillors to be cut from the current 11 down to just 7. That would also require for the divisions to be adjusted, with fewer councillors each responsible for larger areas. Councillors are split on the idea, and the Brisbane Channel will keep an eye out for any updates. Up in Moreton Bay, and they've just celebrated the 90th anniversary of the Hornibrook Bridge, although there's only a small part of it remaining. Most of the bridge was demolished in 2011 due to safety concerns. Also in Moreton Bay, a much-loved skate park in Dayborough is set to be upgraded. It's expected to be completed late this year. If you run a small business in Moreton Bay, you may like to know that Council has partnered with Constant Contact and Xero to offer 6 months of free access to digital tools and training to help grow and manage finances for up to 1,000 local small businesses. I've put a link to the offer in the video description. Back in Brisbane City, and this week it was announced that Engler Dam will be stocked with bass for recreational fishing as part of the Queensland Stocked Impoundment Permit Scheme next year. They'll also be trialling jungle perch. That's a quick bite. Now for the beefier updates. As you would have seen in the brief update I put out on Thursday, the footpath replacement on the city side of the Story Bridge has been completed ahead of schedule, after the footpaths on both sides of the bridge being closed for around 7 months. How much ahead of schedule is something I guess we'll never know, as the most specific Brisbane City Council was when talking about timelines was before the end of the year. I haven't been able to make it over there to check out the new footpaths since they reopened on Friday, but one of the Brisbane Channel's members, James from Rollerblading Brisbane, skated over the newly opened path on Friday, and you can see the video of that here. Of course, home values have continued to increase across Greater Brisbane, and it seems Brisbane is bucking a nationwide trend in this area as well. While home prices have increased in every city, with Brisbane seeing the second highest annual increase for house prices out of all capitals, it's unit prices where Brisbane has been described by Cotality as being an outlier. Increases in unit prices in Greater Brisbane has outpaced house prices for the last 7 quarters. While Perth and Hobart also saw unit values increase more than house values did in the September quarter, Brisbane stands out for the consistency of this trend. This is put down to severe shortage in the housing market here. Here's the suburbs across Greater Brisbane that have seen the largest increases in home values over the past year. And of course, with the lack of supply, rents have continued to rise as well, with a 5.4% increase for houses and 6.4% for units over the year to the end of September. So whether you're buying or renting, things are not ideal at the moment. And in the Brisbane LGA, data shows that you're also paying a lot more in the form of council charges. A recent release from the council opposition points out that many council fees have increased dramatically from the 2019-20 financial year to the current one. This includes the introduction of a fee for people who receive their rates notices by post. Council has added a $1.98 fee to cover postage costs, but the opposition claims that they have new data showing that the cost to Council to send a rates notice is $1.53. So with almost 250,000 residents being mailed their notices, that equates to a $112,500 profit for Council each quarter. One increase that I found interesting was that at a time when housing supply is so severely lacking, development assessments for a new house have increased by over 177% over the last 6 years. Here's the full list of increases provided to the Brisbane Channel by Brisbane City Council's opposition. While we're looking at household costs, the state government has announced a review of southeast Queensland water supply prices by Unity Water and Urban Utilities, which they claim will ensure residents get value for money. The review will be undertaken in 2 stages. Stage 1 will run until mid-2027 and focus on productivity, policy and cost efficiency measures, while Stage 2 will run from 2027 to 2030 and take a detailed look at costs, service standards and pricing. The review will be undertaken by the state's independent regulator, the Queensland Competition Authority. In Moreton Bay, the medical imaging results of up to 9,000 patients at Caboolture Hospital's Specialist Outpatient Department may have not been properly reviewed by doctors. Metro North Health says that they discovered in late September that a patient had died after scans that showed advanced stage cancer were delayed by 5 weeks. But that led to Metro North Health discovering that it was part of a wider problem that stemmed back to an internal change in their processes that was implemented at Caboolture Hospital in April of 2023. While patients were provided results of imaging scans electronically, the faxed copies were not consistently provided to the specialist who requested the test. They say that all patients who have been affected will be contacted, with imaging taken for patients in high-risk categories to be given priority. If you're concerned you may be one of the people affected, you can call 075433 8888 to find out what to do next. While the medical situation up in Moreton Bay may have some issues for humans, at least exotic pets and their owners can relax knowing that they'll be well taken care of thanks to one of the sponsors of this video, the Exotics Vet. The Exotics Vet is an independently owned and operated vet practice in Redcliffe. With a fully equipped hospital, they can do blood tests, ultrasound, radiographs, endoscopies and surgical procedures for your pet, and they'll treat pretty much anything except cats, dogs and livestock. Far too many for me to list in this short promo. They also offer routine procedures like desexing and microchipping. The dedicated team have over 30 years experience in exotics veterinary practice between them, and they're offering 15% off consultation fees for clients who mention this video. Click this QR code or the link in the video description to find out more. This might be a good time to let you know about something I'll be trialling over the next little while. For some updates, I may drip feed them on the Brisbane Channel's Instagram account instead of squeezing them into the weekly updates. This will be for some updates that are either quite visual while not being too deep or complex, or for brief updates such as those that are usually included in the Quick Bites section. My aim is to keep these weekly update videos to a reasonable length, only including the updates that really warrant longer discussion, while still making sure you don't miss out on some of the other things happening across the LGAs that are good to know. We'll see how it goes, but I've already dropped some updates out of this video with the aim of sharing them on the Instagram account over the next few days. There'll be some new development details for a start, but one that I decided to keep in this video is a $1.5 billion project that, if approved, will have 5 residential buildings on the river at Tenerife, each with its own rooftop wellness retreat. Facilities will include infinity pools, mineral plunge pools, hydrotherapy areas, and steam and sauna suites. The precinct, called Tenerife Banks, because you'll probably only be able to afford to live there if you have one of your own, also features a private health club exclusively for residents. Also proposed is one of Brisbane's largest private members venues, the Canopy Club, which will include private dining areas, a wine cellar and tasting lounge, library, cinema, sports simulator, and 5-star workspaces overlooking the river. I've got to say it's hard not to give my 2 cents on this here and now, but you know I like to keep my views out of the main update part of these videos, so let's move on to the next update. With tackling youth crime one of the main platforms from which the current state government campaigned leading up to the last election, we're starting to see some of the programs that are being tried in this space, beyond the adult crime, adult time legislative changes. In Moreton Bay, for example, 2 early intervention programs have this month been allocated funding under the state government's Kickstarter program. Redcliffe Area Youth Space has received $300,000 to support at-risk youth aged between 12 and 21, providing trauma-informed case management, mentoring, education support, pathways to employment and pro-social activities. And the Lutheran Church of Australia, Queensland District has received $300,000 to support young people aged 10 to 17 who are offending or at risk of entering the youth justice system. I'll reserve my views on the programs and the state government's approach to dealing with this issue for the segment toward the end of this video, where I give my 2 cents. This week, the state government also announced initiatives aimed at rehabilitating youth offenders after they've been through the justice system. Their Staying on Track program offers up to 12 months of rehabilitation for youths exiting detention, including at least 6 months intensive support to reintegrate them into the community and prevent them falling back into a cycle of crime. 3 community-led organisations, Fearless Towards Success, Engler Southern Queensland and Village Support Limited, will deliver programs in locations including Ipswich and Inala. The government release says that these programs use a network of mentors, family support and community engagement to help youth strengthen life skills, build positive relationships and reduce reoffending, laying the foundation for long-term change. But I can't really talk about programs delivered by the Crisafulli government without mentioning something that's been brought to my attention this week. The Crisafulli home has recently undergone renovations, and this week David Crisafulli's wife Tegan put in an application to Brisbane City Council for an exemption to the local height limit after the renovations resulted in the home exceeding the prescribed limit. The thing to note here is that Brisbane City Council is an LNP majority council, so when the LNP state premier's home doesn't follow the city rules, it will be difficult for the City Council to defend their decision if an exemption is granted. The Labor opposition in Council are calling for the majority in Council to be firm but fair in enforcing local planning laws. We'll keep you updated here on the Brisbane Channel. A quick shout out to the other sponsor of this video, YB Painting Services. I've seen their work and their professionalism and meticulous attention to detail is impressive. With fixed pricing and a 5-year warranty on all their work, you can be sure there'll be no unpleasant surprises with YB Painting Services. Claim your 10% discount by scanning this QR code or the link in the video description. Now to something a bit lighter, and the Mayor of Ipswich, Teresa Harding, is on a mission to get Ed Sheeran to visit her LGA when he tours Australia next year. Since May, Harding has sent letters and emails, posted on social media, and even hand-delivered an invitation to his hometown pub in the other Ipswich in England. It seems her efforts are being noticed, as last week Harding unveiled a mural of Sheeran in Ipswich Central, painted by artist Duncan Mattox, which was funded by Warner Music Australia, Ed Sheeran's record label here in Oz. Sheeran will be playing 3 sellout shows in Suncorp Stadium in February. If you missed out on tickets, you should have been a member of the Brisbane Channel, as members have access to a monthly list of events not just happening that month, but also upcoming events you may need to get tickets to in advance. There's currently details on that list of 4 concerts and events whose tickets aren't selling yet, but who have a wait list that you can join. Maybe now's the time for you to take the leap and become a member, as your support as a member really does help keep this channel running. Thanks to these members for their continued support. Okay, that's all the neutral, factual updates. Now it's time for me to give my 2 cents on issues covered in the updates. Well, one issue this week anyway, and that is the state government's approach to dealing with youth crime. This is a massive topic and one I'm still only just beginning to explore, so I'll focus on what's been announced this week, along with other initiatives that have already been implemented. I'll admit that my view early on was that how the Crisafulli government initially looked at approaching this issue seemed to be quite ill-informed. As part of the youth crime video I've been working on, I spoke with a range of people working in this space before the current state government was voted in, from victim advocates to youth advocates, and one person I spoke with was Keith Hamburger, who is former Director General of the Queensland Corrective Services Commission. In the interview, Mr. Hamburger was quite critical of taking an overly punitive approach to dealing with youth crime, and everyone I spoke with, including victim advocates, were mostly on the same page, emphasising the importance of preventing youth from entering the justice system in the first place by dealing with the factors that lead to them being involved in crime. This is supported by evidence that harsher punishments do not act as an effective deterrent when those factors that contribute to the decision to commit a crime aren't addressed. So when all of the releases coming from the state government after they took office were initially all about harsher laws, stronger punishment, and increased police presence and activities, I felt that initial expectations that had been set up during their election campaign were being met, and I didn't feel positive about that at all, as it seemed to be an approach that has no basis on what evidence says works to reduce crime. But more recently, we've been seeing more announcements about programs aimed at both community-based prevention and rehabilitation programs. While I haven't delved into the details of the programs, the fact that they are being funded is, in my eyes, a positive thing. While I personally feel that there is still more of a focus on punitive measures, at least regarding the tone of the media releases that are being put out, and a general lack of empathy for kids who are often suffering the effects of disorders such as fetal alcohol spectrum disorder or some pretty intense trauma, I'm heartened by the increase in announcements of programs that aim to provide support to divert children from entering the justice system and to helping them not re-enter it after serving time. While I do harbour some degree of scepticism when it comes to the current government's approaches, I feel we do need to avoid painting the efforts to deal with the situation using only black and white paint. There does at least seem to be some level of effort being put into taking a more holistic approach, even if the balance is slightly off, considering the evidence of what has been shown to be effective and what hasn't. Ultimately, it will only be when we look at the crime rate figures a few years down the track that we'll be able to assess the approach currently being taken. But unfortunately, even police figures can be tweaked to support whatever the government of the time wants them to show. This is not exclusive to the current state government, it's just politicians in general. Proving themselves to be right so that they can get voted in again next time seems to be more important than integrity. But I will be exploring the current efforts in the eyes of experts and existing research for the video on youth crime. Actually, if you'd like to help out with the research for that video, particularly if this is an area of your expertise, as I know we do have some people studying criminology, law, and psychology among the channel's viewers, do send me an email. I've found the limitations of being one person trying to do everything have restricted my ability to put together some of these bigger deep dive videos. Youth crime, homelessness, housing, Olympics, it's a long list. I'm definitely happy for some community help, which may mean I can get these videos done sooner. The last video I put out that involved speaking with a range of advocates and people working in the field was this one that I did on active transport in Brisbane. If you haven't watched it yet, I recommend checking that one out next. From the part of the world that once had the longest pedestrian bridge, see ya.